Hey guys, so welcome to one more episode of the Schbang In It podcast. This time we've got a great guest. We've got Dinesh Sharma, who is got a career of over 22 years in consumer electronics. He started his career with selling durables, and now he sells mobile phones. His current position is that he's the head of business for mobile phones for ASUS in India, and he also leads the commercial business. So this conversation is wide ranging, from innovation to understanding product to really going in the depth of technology and how to bring change in technology, and also really like how do you marry the intersection between technology and marketing. So if you're somebody who is on the agency side or on the marketer side, and who wants to like really build their career in the technology business, this one is going to give you superb insights. I think also it touches upon some very, very interesting things about how the Indian consumer has evolved over the last 20 years. So I really enjoyed having this conversation. I think it's one of our richer conversations with respect to like really going in deep. And I hope you guys enjoy it too. So over to this conversation with Dinesh. Awesome, Dinesh. So thanks for coming and speaking on this. I think you come with such a wealth of experience. It's now, I think we were talking before this, and it's 22 years since you've seen the market so closely.
Yes.
And you started actually selling consumer electronics.
Yes.
And now you're selling the most high-end mobile phones. And you've sold a lot in the middle, and we'll go through all of that. But like the first thing that was in my head when I wanted to ask you was like 2000, early 2000 versus 2021. How has this Indian consumer changed over the last 20 years?
Thanks, Harshil, for having me. I hope my sharing today of my experience and knowledge helps a lot of other marketeers. That's what your probable intention is.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. So like 21 years or 22 years, a lot has changed actually. At that point of time, the whole space of information availability, information consumption, and decision making, while buying products, and also the choice of products was very, very different as compared to today. So it was strictly offline buying at that point of time. There was nothing like like online purchase at that point of time. The mindset was like you go to the store, and then you would actually see the product. You will go by the recommendation that the dealer would make to you. You will actually have a choice of the products that's probably available only at the store who you trust, right? The retailer you trust. And then among the brands and the products that he would show to you and offer to you and explain to you, you would typically go and make a choice, correct? That was the typical buying behavior about 21 years back. And then maybe you would, like kind of, like take recommendations, and your other sources of information were non-digital in nature. So it was TV, and it was your print, and it was your like outdoor. So very, very traditional media where you used to get probably the salience building of the brand and the product used to happen. And then it was all left to the retailer, and how do you kind of like shape up the retail environment. In the early days, in the early 2000s, even the retail was quite different from what it is today. So especially at least in the electronics category at that point of time, the dealers and their sales staff used to play a lot of important role in terms of educating the customer on the choices available, on the benefits available in a certain product, and then the consumer used to be like pitched, and the consumer used to then.
So the power would be very concentrated, and
Absolutely.
It's a little more a lot more decentralized now.
Absolutely. Compared to that now, it's completely changed. So you've got like digital as the key source of information. People look up online, they watch a lot of videos today to actually gain understanding of the product, where the product is demonstrated by maybe some of the influencers who are looked up to. When in any kind of a category, there's a lot of online research done in terms of what consumer feedback is. People have a lot of selection available of brands or products because they can go to Amazon or Flipkart, and they can check a whole range of products which could meet their probable demand. And then they've also got a choice of offline. The shopping nature is very changed. Pricing is very transparent. People now go to the store. They also start online application, and they check, okay, like what's the price I'm getting on Amazon and Flipkart, and then they say, okay, this price at the store is okay or not. So the whole it's been like a sea of a change.
Yeah.
So
it's actually very interesting. Two big points that you're talking about is the power of the retail force has gotten decentralized.
Yes.
And some part of that power, the convincing power, has gone to the influencer.
Yes.
The sales power has gone also to the e-channel.
Yes.
Of course, the retail channel also remains.
Right.
You've got also at the same time a plethora of choices for the consumer in terms of how they seek the information.
True.
So it's a super interesting landscape the way it's developed. And
correct.
Now actually what I want to one thing that I think it came in, one thing that I felt like when you were saying, I just wanted to ask you this, I don't know if it's true, but do you feel like the power of branding has actually gotten reduced because of so much, you call in economics perfect information.
Yes.
So, you're closing, you have an economy now which is, like I can see the price, I can compare, I can see the reviews. So do you feel like the power of branding has actually reduced, or is it increased in your viewpoint, or how would you see that?
At least if you look at, industries across the board, okay, there is consolidation happening in terms of brands. At least, when it comes to the larger industries. So let's take example of smartphones, or let's take example of telecom as well. Because it's not just about, this information or the consumer making choice, etc. It's also about, in this whole paradigm shift which has happened, economies of scale also matter a lot. So, in the larger segments, in the larger industries, what you've seen is that brands which have, been able to focus on the consumer well, serve their needs better, get scale, get more competitive in terms of delivering value to the end customer, are kind of surviving more, because today the information which is available about products and brands is uniform across the country.
Got it.
You cannot say that, okay, like I'm strong in Delhi market, whereas somebody else is strong in Mumbai, so we both can coexist.
Okay, so I have a slightly stupid question. Okay?
Sure.
Now, just to try to understand this,
Yes.
and I hear you about the fact that, look, there's economies of scale. While you have perfect information, you also have economies of scale. You need to serve the consumer at scale at the right price.
Correct.
So I, 2-3 themes coming out of this. One is, I'd love to understand a little bit about how marketers can be more consumer oriented from you.
Sure.
I just touch upon that as well. The other thing, before I jump into that, like my question to you, because you always been part of very large setups, with Bajaj Electricals and then with Vodafone and Samsung, and now, you are leading the ship at ASUS on, like really, really large businesses.
Yes.
When it comes to, always a conventional wisdom is that, small, nimble company will be able to bring agility. But, what you seem to be saying is that actually large companies have the ability to be agile as well.
Yes.
So, could you talk a bit about that in terms of, how a large company is and remains agile? And, how do you bring some of that, how do you bring some of that culture into your teams?
It's a very, very good question. Today, you cannot take anything that you've achieved in the past for granted. At the current point of time, the consumer is rapidly keeping in touch with a lot of information. There is a brand set that the consumer would have in consideration. So there will be a couple of brands which the consumer would have a choice of. And there is intense competition within those brands. So at least in the categories that we operate, which is especially electronics, like smartphones or laptops, you cannot take the consumer for granted. Every single product launch, every single new proposition that you get to the market is like day one. It's like you have to kind of build it up very, very strongly. And product life cycles are actually coming down because the technology is upgrading and changing so fast. As a result of which, you cannot take it for granted that, hey, you've been very successful over the last few years, so your success is going to at least build upon, or you'll have a bit of an ease when you launch the next product.
Yeah.
It starts absolutely like from ground zero, and you need to ensure that this specific product, this specific model also makes an equal impact on the consumer.
So a lot of unlearning every time you're bringing a product to the market.
Yes. Unlearning, no. I would not say it's like unlearning, but you kind of put in, you have to innovate, you have to put in equal intensity of an effort.
Got it.
You have to think through that, how are you meaningfully either building upon your past and then communicate it effectively to the consumer, or you're bringing in something new, and that new would either be for your existing consumers, or there's a new segment of consumers that you want to, reach out in the market to, and then how to, kind of position your product properly for that specific segment, and then build a communication plan that will appeal to that segment. And not only just, this is not just about communications, It's actually genuinely about an entire marketing proposition. You have to really think through end to end, right from the decision making journey to purchase journey to consumption journey, and experiential aspects of it, both from the product and other support and ecosystem that the company provides to the consumer.
I also want to touch a bit upon, because I've seen you working sometimes, and you get global products, but you really tune them to India.
Yes.
So what's your process like with respect to, so actually I want to combine this consumer orientation and agility, because I've seen that both in the work that you do.
Yes.
Which is that you're highly obsessed with the consumer.
Yes.
And you're watching, and then you're also tuning the global product to Indian needs in interesting ways. So, maybe with one of, like the notebooks that you had or the phone experiences that you had, how has that really happened?
Okay.
And I know you usually you don't, you don't put it out there, but I just want the, viewers to just understand that a little bit, that what goes on behind that mind.
Sure. It's actually fundamental. So any marketer needs to be customer obsessed, right? If you really ask me, I wouldn't want to be a CEO, but I would actually like to be like maybe a customer service officer or a customer oriented officer, whatever you can say. Because you really are fundamentally, you need to realize that you need to serve the customer extremely well. And see, global organizations bring in a lot of strength. Like the organizations that I have worked with, I've been very fortunate to work with such very, very good global organizations. They bring in a lot of strength in terms of R&D expertise, innovation, quality, high standards of intent within the organization to serve the customer well. What is required is that you identify that, okay, fine, you've created this platform for the global level. What needs to be changed in it, or what needs to be tweaked in it to kind of make it appeal to the Indian customer more? Like, for example, when we bring our smartphones, we still ensure that, hey, can we add the FM radio for India? Now, it may not be high on the consideration state, but still in India, that's relevant. Same way, you have to really think also from an ecosystem perspective. I mean, like, there are some drastic changes that I can state I worked on in the ecosystem in my past years. So starting from my first organization, we got an the regular kettle which just boils water, right? We got in a kettle which actually is a tea maker, in which you can add water, add tea leaves, add sugar, add milk, brew it just the way you do, because that's what matters to the Indian customer.
I mean, actually, I just want to pause there, because you have a kettle which can put water.
Yes.
And you can boil water.
Yes.
And you guys built a kettle.
Yes.
Which could make tea.
Yes.
So, like how did that whole innovation process happen?
So basically,
because you saw that the Indian consumer is not using a kettle just to have water.
Correct. The use case of boiling water in India was too low. It was a very small segment, you can say. Maybe 5-star hotels would have these kettles where you would boil water, and the way Indians wanted, like Indians would want an electronic product which made sense for them for their daily consumption. And I was the kettle product manager. Like one of the categories that I used to manage was the electric kettle. And then we wanted to grow that business, and we said that, hey, this will not grow just because of this utility. It serves a very small market. Now, if we wanted to grow a kettle market, how can we actually grow it? So the whole point is, can we make a kettle which can actually serve the needs of Indian customers, which is make tea the way Indians make it? And we embarked on this journey of, first asking this question very strongly, and then figuring out how we could achieve it. And that's where our tech partners came into the place. So there's this company called Strix of UK. And somebody from there was equally passionate about India. His name is Richard Morehouse. And Richard came to India and he said, okay, what do we need to do? I said, let's go to the tea stall. And we went to a tea stall and I said, this is how tea is made in India. We first add water, then we add tea leaves, we add certain condiments to it, we add sugar, we add milk, and then it brews, and then finally we filter it and have it. Can we do it in the kettle? And that's how the challenge was taken. And then we created a product like a stainless steel vessel which had to be cylindrical yet not tapering, added 2 elements to it, created a control which started with 2 elements and then switched to a smaller element.
Wow.
So that like first you start with excess heating, and then once you reach a boiling point, and then the consumer could open the kettle while it's on, add sugar, add tea leaves, add milk, brew it, and then
actually
have
in the kettle while it's happening.
Actually in the kettle, yeah, exactly, like you do in a vessel on your gas stove. This is one example. Then, you know, in my CDMA days, I used to head CDMA business in Samsung at a point of time, sales and marketing. And there we realized that CDMA handsets had a problem where, you know, they used to come without the SIM card. Remember?
Yeah.
I mean, like if you had to change from one operator to the other operator, you had to change the phone.
Correct.
And that was quite cumbersome. You know, and GSM on the other side had the huge benefit of just changing the SIM from one phone to the other, and then it was very simple, right? So we created this concept of convincing all the operators, you know, to agree to create a SIM card and to agree to transfer the data settings from the phone to the SIM. So that whenever the consumer, and data was, by the way, the data speed at that time was the strength of the CDMA network. So we convinced them to do that, and we worked with Qualcomm, and we came up with this whole new SIM card, which was called OMH SIM card. Actually, the simple form of OMH is open market handset, which means the SIM can work on any of the handsets, and that's an ecosystem change, which is very major, because these operators like Reliance, Tata, Virgin Mobile or MTS at that point of time was sitting on millions of SIMs inventory, and to convince them that, hey, you know, this is what is required, you know, for the ecosystem, because the consumer behavior is that he wants that benefit. Let's make it happen together. What does Samsung do? We came up with this phone which could work with this new SIM card. So we took the risk. We came up with this first OMH handset in the world, okay, that could allow the consumers to change the SIM in CDMA just the way they could do in GSM, and that changed the market. Of course, then CDMA went through another track because of other reasons. You know, it's not just about the handset ecosystem out there, right? So these are some examples that I'm stating out here. Okay,
but what
way
is,
from
you know,
the
what
past.
is very interesting to me is that, and I'm just, you know, like I'm trying to put parallels, right? Like, let's say a conventional regular marketer, let's take your case with the electric tea kettle also. You took the initiative to say, I'm sure it's not as easy as what you're putting it out to be, because, you know, you said, yeah, I just took this guy to see how tea is
no, it's
made,
not as
and
easy.
then, you know,
It's
like,
not as easy,
because you're obviously changing an entire manufacturing process. You are, you know, you're asking the company to put capex behind this.
Yes, that's right.
You are then building with conviction that, look, this is the marketing plan that's going to be there, and this is how it's going to be selling. So there's a lot that goes behind it. You know, so just if somebody's sitting in a company and, you know, like, I think that's what's coming out from where I'm speaking with you, the vibe I'm getting is, look, here's a guy who drives change in companies. You know, so if you want to drive change in companies, you know, what is it that you need to bring to the table if you want to bring change in companies?
Very, very good question, Harshil. So while all this was possible, it requires a lot of trust building in the organization. So, you know, these large, especially the large multinationals that we work with, you need to you know, like develop trust with your performance. Maybe start with smaller steps, create belief, maybe do small incremental changes, show the impact of those incremental changes. And yes, you have to be a very good, I believe you've got to be very good with your product, very deep with your product, understand end to end how the product development process is, because when you go back to your headquarters, when you go back to your R&D teams or to your manufacturing teams and you tell them to make changes, by the way, I've not touched the software aspects of things right now, because the products that we sell have a lot of software integration. So the first and most important mantra that I work with is made for India. Even today, each and every one of our products, you know, we bring the products which are, you know, like kind of we bring in the essence of
But
India.
it's a very interesting point you make, you know, and I've been actually in presentations with you where I've been so impressed with the amount of detail that you know the product, and such a good point that you make, that if you want to actually change manufacturing, or if you want to convince product teams to tailor to you, you need to give them that respect that, look, I understand the product probably as well as you do. I mean, maybe not as well as you do, but I really have a deep appreciation of the product. I'm obsessed with this product. And then I've seen this is what the consumer is doing. And this is a change I think we can make. Maybe I'm not 100% right, but like, you know. Let's work together and move it to this direction. So I think that's a super point actually of really understanding the technical of the product. And you, I mean, like, you always had a technical mind?
I would say it comes naturally to me.
Okay. Yeah. So, but actually, I think you've actually hit the nail on the head. To drive change is the small building of trust, step by step, and then you're talking about like consumer centricity, and you're talking about like really consumer centricity means observing that, you know, kettles, water, you know,
Yes,
people don't
true.
make tea this way.
True.
And that's a simple example, but I'm sure there's many others in your
Yes.
career. But and then there is this idea of also the technical, which I feel very few people actually touch upon. You know, in the marketing ecosystem, very few people are obsessed about product. So, you know, like and I know that, you know, one of the other things about you is that you're obsessed, you know, you sell the ROG phone, which is the best gaming phone in India. And, you know, I've seen that you're an obsessive gamer suddenly over the last few years once you started selling the ROG phone. So, you know, you mentioned that there's the software side. So I'd love for you to talk a bit about that, you know, how you've gone inside the mind of the gamer and, you know, why did you pick up gaming in the first place? I don't see too many, you know, heads of businesses who do that. Like, I'm just going to, you know, I'm going to be obsessed with gaming.
Very, very good question again. So one more thing is experience what your consumer experiences. Unless and until you don't really experience what your consumer is going to experience, you're never going to be able to figure out what he really wants. So one of the other things that I definitely do is like I use all my products and use them like in great detail, so that I really understand what's the experience like, what would that consumer be feeling, or what is that consumer currently doing, or what is that consumer currently passionate about, and do exactly that. Like somebody asked me like, okay, which games you know, are you playing nowadays? By the way, I play the games which our consumers play. So if today they are playing, let's say BGMI, I'm playing BGMI. If they were playing COD, I'll play COD. If they're playing any other game, I would like get into it and you know, kind of play that game myself, interact with them, get into it, realize the level of toughness, realize the kind of skill set, you know, that is required, see how our product is, you know, performing in those scenarios, how it's enhancing and making the life better.
Can you talk about some of those technical aspects of your product? Because I just want the
Sure.
audiences to get a glimpse of that. You know, I've seen it a bit, but I'd love,
Sure.
you know, and maybe we can interlay the screens when we're on the edit also, so we can see what's behind that product.
Okay, fair. So when it comes to, let's say, because Harshil is talking a lot about the ROG phone and gaming, so I'll get into that right now. See, one of the key aspects about gaming is that, you know, when you are, it's no longer is something that you can actually memorize, in the sense like earlier when you played games, these were not real-time games. So if you played Quake 2 or something, okay, you knew that, you know, you're getting into a zone, and then you know what are the steps which are coming, and therefore you know how to, you know, like this monster will come from there or there, and you know then each stage how to clear, and then progressively as you clear stages, maybe it becomes difficult if you go higher and higher. But nowadays, gaming, for example, is real time. There is nothing that is simulated. It's a map or it's a zone that you get into where other people are getting into, and therefore each person that you are gaming with is quite different, and therefore that brings in the exciting part of gaming, which is it's unpredictable. You don't know, like today, of course, you know, the game tries to just match your skill set and get similar skill set people into the play, because now skill set is what matters. So when you want to, you know, now meet the need of the gamer, you need to create a product that can actually enhance his skills, that can actually make his job easier and make gaming more fun for him. That's one part of it. Second is, you know, enhance the experiential experience of gaming, which means that when you are into it, it's so realistic, and it is so, it's like it virtually takes you inside the game and then gives you all the realistic output that is really required for you know, feeling that you are in that game. Because when you go into the game, you know, trust me, I mean, like gamers, when we are into the game, we don't actually see anything else. It's like you are in that zone, and then the visual experience, the oral experience, like from where does the sound come, which directional audio, like really matters. Because
that's why on the device you got audio coming from all places.
No, so on the device the speakers are made in such a way that they actually give true stereo effect, and they use advanced technologies like crosstalk cancellation, which ensure that, let's say if somebody in the game is hitting you from the right, or let's say moving towards you from the right side, you can actually you know precisely, the oral comes in such a manner that you know that the guy is coming from the right or shooting at you from the right. Same way the visuals, the HDR has to be so good that, you know, even in shadows you are able to see somebody is hiding. So you can react.
And you do a lot of that when you're playing the games, you're giving feedback to the product teams that, you know, this is how it's happening.
Of course.
And that's a lot of the work that you do.
Yes, I do. I mean, like, to be honest with you, once you are into it, you are gaming, you obviously come to know that if there is anything or if there is an enhancement which happens, you can know the small changes of enhancement which happens, because especially, for gamers, those small changes could also make a big difference, because it's literally like in realistic world, if you talk in the real world, it's like if you press a trigger and you get killed, it's like that split second difference can make a big difference for a professional gamer from winning or losing a tournament. And you are talking about making products that operate at that level of precision, that an advanced gamer can have that split second advantage whether he can win or lose. So it's pretty much like a sport today.
So it's like, it's one thing like knowing that there's a split second advantage, but really feeling what a split second advantage is, you need, that's why you go into the games.
Absolutely.
And that helps you connect with gamers a lot also, you feel?
Absolutely, it does. So when you're actually talking to the gamers, you're talking their language, you understand their pain points, so you understand what they're doing right now, what's relevant to them, what's not relevant to them, what will matter to them. It really makes that difference a lot.
So moving now from a very focused audience, which is gamers. So you've just had a superstar launch of a Chromebook that you've just brought into the market. So I have a couple of questions on that, and just for the context of all those who are listening into this. I mean, I don't know, I'll let you, Dinesh, say what the official, whatever's possible to say. But what I know is that I saw this screenshot of Chromebooks was here. And then within a span of a few days, ASUS Chromebook is as big as Chromebook. So the whole country is searching for ASUS Chromebook. And it's a mass market launch because you're targeting, you're talking right now passionately about gamers, but I know in a few seconds you're going to equally passionately talk about students. And you're talking about homemakers and how this is a must-have kind of home device, and you didn't call it a a laptop for a particular reason. So we'll talk a bit about that. But there's two things that you've done here. One is that you got the country suddenly to look at this.
Yes.
Suddenly start searching for this. But there's also the you've also done this big deal with Flipkart, and you've kind of really convinced them to buy into what you're doing. And given them that conviction. So maybe if you can talk through two aspects of it. One is the the consumer orientation. I know you spoke about all that also earlier about the consumer market fit, but here you've kind of really drilled down into a consumer market fit, and you've got a distribution game going which is really, really strong, and you've got a partner which is backed you all the way to create history on this category. So maybe we can talk a bit about that.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, applying the same fundamentals basically. So coming to Chromebooks, we realized that the laptop has become truly now an individual device. So compared to just say, let's say before the pandemic, okay, where we used to have one laptop at home, and we used to kind of use that personal laptop maybe on the weekends, and then multiple people in the house used to use the same laptop for the infrequent applications that were there for the same. Over the last 1 year, this scenario completely changed. Okay, all of us are studying from home, working from home, and all of us, a lot of family members now need a laptop. If you ask me personally in my house, I stay with my parents, and therefore we are 6 of us with my children, and we have 4 laptops right now, right? So the point is that because children need a laptop for their schooling, okay, so each individual child would need a laptop for their own self, and then we would need it. I would need it for my work, and then my wife would need it for her set of work. So there are 4 laptops that are being used, simultaneously. If you look at India at large, okay, the point is that affordability matters a lot, right? Second point is that ease of, transiting to a new device is also important, okay. Third is that, at let's say affordable price point or the kind of use cases that people have, is there something, which could fit in better and be more, simple to use, at the same time fast to use, at the same time cost economical to use.
Got it.
When we looked at all these parameters and you see the demand, I mean, below 30K market is actually very big. And within that market, one of the biggest use cases was children requiring the laptop for study. So students contributed to a large part of the segment.
Amazing. And there's this whole part of the whole, working with a large e-commerce giant like Flipkart also, and getting that done.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Flipkart have been our very, very strong partner for a very long time. And the good part is that when they heard us, they believed very strongly in this fact that we should jointly create this category. There is a demand, there's a need, and consumers are currently not aware. So we should come together and put in efforts to create the category rather than just do a product launch. So that is something which comes with long relationships and trust among two partners working for a very long time. And that trust has paved off both the companies multiple times in the past, and this time we again took a leap of faith. And what the reason why we came together is also very interestingly, this category was not built, it was very nascent, and both of us believed that, hey, this category deserves to be built. It can become big, and that conviction coming together and then going after it together as a team was a great effort, and that's what basically partnerships are all about.
Got it.
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit to partnerships, like I realize that you have very strong partnerships with your HQ, whether it's Samsung with the Koreans or now with ASUS with Taiwan, you have a very strong partnership going. And I know that sometimes whether it's global communication being built, you are often at the center of that global communication, giving inputs on that. You also know your product really well, so all of that's coming in. But there's so many professionals of us in India who work with companies which are headquartered outside. So some advice on actually I'd like to split this in two parts. Some advice on dealing with headquarters, which is separately located. And I know that there's been a lot of talk around India, around perhaps the US headquarter or a European headquarter, let's say a French headquarter or something like that, but very very little bit focused on the on the Korean headquarter or the Taiwanese headquarter. So I think that's a unique one to add, just in terms of cultural nuances, what is different. So that's the first part, and I have a second part which is to do with today I think a lot of Indian companies will also go outside India, so they will be headquarters. So when they're dealing with other cultures, how should, if they are in headquarters, how should they deal with it? But first we'll take the dealing with headquarters part. Okay.
So first thing, I think as it goes with any organization, whether it is an Indian company or a global company, I think as a leader, your performance, credibility, and execution capability, of course communication capability, how do you go back, how do you kind of present facts, how do you present ideas, how do you kind of appeal, because see, ultimately they are also, like anybody sitting in a global organization today looking at global markets is quite capable. Whoever is the decision maker is very capable, that's why he's got there. So you need to respect that. You need to always go with the fact, with the context that they need to get the right kind of information, and even if they drill down, they should have, you could be able to drill down as much as you can. You should have that much depth of understanding of what you're talking about, and then you present, when you talk to them and you present those facts, and if they want to drill down and they drill down and they see that everything is well thought through, everything is well covered, they create that conviction. And then obviously you need to have your financial metrics also very clear and right. So your numbers also have to be very strong in terms of projections, in terms of pricing, cost implications, how your P&L is going to look like, probably based on the kind of marketing activities or whatever investments you want to do for the country in manufacturing or product development, etc. And then the return that could be expected out of serving the market well, and also both tangible returns as well as intangible returns in terms of brand building in the future. If you are able to think through holistically and put everything together, so typically if you go unidimensionally, you would realize that you would somewhere or the other probably get stuck. Like maybe the product proposition that you may want may not be feasible at all. So you're not talking then sense to them. But if you are in depth holistically about your business, and then you go 360 and you understand what you're talking, and what are the effects or implications of what you're presenting, and the implications seem to be fair and acceptable and make sense, you will get a buy-in into your organization from any of the levels that you work with.
Got it.
And that is universal, I believe. And maybe some cultures would like to have it presented to them in a certain way. Some other cultures would like to have it presented to them in another way. So you create that cultural understanding of the headquarters, because I've worked with a European company as well, and I've also worked with an Indian company in my past, and then I've worked with Korean, and now I'm working with a Taiwanese company. So I think, yeah, you have to understand the culture, and you have to understand where.
Are there some specific nuances of some of these, I mean, because you work with different cultures, so maybe just off the top of your head, if something comes that, the Taiwanese are different from the Koreans this way, are different from the Europeans this way?
I think when we talk about East per se, they like to understand the risk on the marketing side much better. They're more product oriented. On the Western side, I found that the relative ease with which they will go ahead and kind of punt on marketing or invest in marketing would be much more relatively easier, and the investment in brands come much more easier. So you have to, probably these are the two major differences, and obviously language understanding is much more easier out there. So here, when you talk, you have to really simplify. When you talk to on the eastern side of India, you've got to really simplify your English, for example. I mean, like, small part of it, but important part of it, so that whatever your communication is easily understood.
Got it.
Since that's not the primary language out there. Whereas on the Western side, the primary language is pretty much English, so it's much more different. So these are some of the small cultural differences, but more or less fundamentally, I've seen people who are carrying out global businesses have very similar mindset, not major differences, I would say.
Got it. And I think there was this other point about, but I think you actually answered that, so I'll skip the point about if Indians have global headquarters, because then I think it's the mirror, it's pretty much the same thing that you expect.
Correct.
From the other side. We've spoken a lot about B2C markets.
Yes.
And you've recently also been given the responsibility to build out the B2B business, the commercial business for ASUS in India, and that's another different kind of animal itself. So some of this thing which you're talking about, like really being obsessed with the gaming consumer and trying to understand this change that's happening in the households with the kids wanting their own books and so on and so forth. How is B2B different?
Very interesting. So I think the biggest, one of the big differences in B2B, especially in the segment that we operate in, which is IT, is that there are at least, this customer who's sitting out there is kind of he's got very detailed knowledge about the products, about the companies, about the requirements are very, very specific, and they are at a larger scale. So when you're talking into, when you're going into the B2B customer space, again, you got to really go in depth and understand what are their needs, from a product perspective. And in B2B, it's not only just product, but the customer is kind of buying into your organization for a longer period of time. Because during the usage journey of the product, the customer needs excellent support from you.
Right.
Even though it's there on the consumer side also, but the difference is quite stark, because in the consumer side, each individual consumer needs to get service from you. Here, an organization needs to get service from you, where there are maybe like thousands of end users who are connected to this one IT team, where there are very few individuals, and this individual kind of takes care of these 1,000, and anything that goes around with one of the thousands also impacts this individual. So it's quite different. And therefore, you need to, what I've realized is that we need to create a service ecosystem also, which is very, very different from that of, let's say, the consumer business.
So what are some of the innovations you brought in your service ecosystem?
Couple of ones actually. So number one, we realized that we need to be better. So our aspiration is very, very sky high. We want to be the most preferred brand for an end customer in the B2B space, in the enterprise space for PCs. Now, when I say most preferred, I really mean it, which means we need to be better than the current number one and number two. It's a very easy thing to say like this, or like kind of paint this kind of a high aim or aspiration or a BHAG goal, but then you've got to walk the talk and you've got to make it happen. So right from the day one, you've got to go and work towards that goal, set a very high standard, and kind of build your organization capability to meet that standard, and then go to the customer once you're ready. So before we launched our ExpertBook series, we not only, we knew we can make great products. I mean, like ASUS is excellent in terms of tech and making products, which every customer would also easily buy into. But what is more important is that are we going to be able to service him at the level at which anybody can service him in the enterprise side? So we created a 12-hour, 6 days a week service center. A special dedicated helpline, which is one of the longest hours a helpline operates for an enterprise customer in the B2B space. We ensured that, like a warranty, for example, because a lot of our big organizational customers, they are pretty much global in nature today. Indian companies, especially on the IT side, are global in nature today. So our warranty, for example, as a standard is international, which is different, by the way, from the rest of the industry. You might think that this is something that should come as a hygiene, but it's not. We provide warranty even on accessories like adapters, which by the way are considered as peripherals by others and may not be covered under warranty. We created all the other packs which the customer wants, like a default on-site service. The customer may want, let's say, extended warranty, extended accidental damage protection, battery warranty extension, hard disk retention, all different kind of needs which large enterprise customers have, and we made it up to 5 years. So when you look at it from a long duration perspective, also when the customer comes to us, he knows that, okay, ASUS can cover it well. So we ensured that we have, we are really taking into account what anyways the customer expects, because it's a hygiene offering from the entire set of industry players. But we also ensured that we will go a step above and try and do something extra for our consumers, for the end customers, which matters to them. And probably they are either paying extra or missing out on, despite the fact that the industry is so mature. Now this and structuring it well and then going to the market and scaling up a service or down even by the type of customer, along with great products, great pricing and great partnerships that we've developed again in the ecosystem with our system integrators and value-added reseller partners. We've been able to convince a lot of marquee brands, a lot of marquee companies in each different vertical, to today start trusting ASUS, working with ASUS, place orders on ASUS, and also I'm very happy to say that we are getting now repeat orders from these very large customers, and these are big orders. So that is what is the testimony of what we've kind of built in the B2B space as well.
Got it. Now my last question, coming back to where you started from, I hear a lot of customers in consumer durables business.
Yes.
They talk about in a way like awe of the mobile business.
Yes.
Because of how much coverage a phone launch gets, or like how many reviews are suddenly there overnight, and how much traction is there. There's a whole army of influencers who want to really give an opinion on a product launch. So if you were to give advice to the industry you started in, consumer durables, in terms of saying that if you guys want to achieve this kind of, for lack of a better word, the same sex appeal of mobiles,
yes,
what is it that you would advise them to do at this point in time?
I think the first thing about smartphones, the reason of this massive appeal is the fact that the involvement of the consumer is too high, and it's a device which stays with you the whole day, and it kind of your life depends on it, moves on it. Your 80% of consumption, or let's say 70% of consumption at least, happens on the phone. So it really is a part of you today, inseparable, and you spend the maximum time with it. So it's very high involvement. So this high involvement, given the fact that you change your phone also a couple of years, and you look at the size of the population, makes the smartphone market one of the biggest electronics market in the country by sheer volume, like 150 million plus devices getting sold. I doubt any other electronics category matches the scale. So yes, so when you want to actually try and aim for the kind of same appeal, same kind of sex appeal that you have for smartphone and other categories, the task becomes enormous and tough. Now what you need to understand is that one of the key essences why it is so much appealing and why people are so much involved and get into it, and it has the kind of audience even for every single product launch, is because of the involvement, right, that we've been able to create with the consumer, or this category creates with the consumer. So if you're a marketeer, if you want that same kind of fervor to come in for your product category, you need to see how you can create or increase that involvement of the consumer for your product. How deep does it start relating to it, how much it becomes part of his life, how much passion you can arise in your consumer's heart and mind, to make sure that he about your category and your product. I think if you're able to do that, then the kind of fervor and the appeal that mobile or smartphone as a category has built would kind of get built for other categories, in my opinion.
Amazing. Okay, awesome, Dinesh. But thanks so much. I know we're a little bit out of time, but thanks so much for, I think there's 2-3 things that I'm taking out from this, which is like, the way you went. I think the point you made about knowing the product is a super point. I don't think too many people kind of know that, and I think thanks for taking us through some of these big bets which you made on, the Chromebook, which is congratulations on that launch, and how you have gone inside the mind of the gamer and taking us some of that through, and also this the story of the tea kettle, which is a fantastic story of and then perhaps it gives people a little bit of an insight into how to drive change inside companies. So thanks for spending your time with us, and looking forward to see all the changes you bring over the next few years again.
Thanks, Harshil. Thanks for the opportunity, and hope everyone kind of benefits from this. Thanks a lot for watching this. Really appreciate it.